I seem to have a little bit of an amplification problem here, but good morning. My name is Ken Malcomson. I'm the President and CEO of the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of our co-hosts, the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce, the GLBT Chamber of Commerce, the Dallas 40, and our favorite partner from the last election cycle, the League of Women Voters, we want to welcome you here today. And I have the... I'm candidly a little bit surprised about the size of the audience. I think Mark Bateman told me that there are about 235 seats in this room, and we sold, quote unquote, or we registered almost 300 people. So I'm not sure where everybody is this morning, but I'm sure there'll be some people coming in as we get going today. What a privilege for us to be here hosting you. There are three thank yous that I want to recognize right off the bat. First and foremost, I want to thank Texas Scottish Rite Hospital for their hospitality today. Mark Bateman and Bob Walker, thank you very much. I also want to thank Richland Student Media. Richland Student Media is live streaming today's event, and it will also be recorded for future reference, and it'll be available, according to Jack, I think this afternoon. So if anybody was not here today that you know and would like to see this candidate forum, please direct them to Richland Student Media. And secondly, I would like to thank all of you for your interest and your engagement in this great city. And third, I want to thank our candidates. We're talking about people that have not only demonstrated real commitment to their community, but they're also willing to serve, and they're willing to serve this great city, and we can't thank them enough for their willingness to do that. This is the first time, as far as we know, that all 8 candidates are on the same stage together, and this is really thank to each of you for being here. Really appreciate it. So in the interest of time, I'm going to turn the program over to our moderator. Our moderator today is Ron Chapman. Ron Chapman is a shareholder in the law firm of Ogletree and Deakins. He's also a past board chair of the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, and in his own right has had a profound impact on our community. Ron?
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you all for being here and being engaged in this campaign, particularly at an event that starts at 7:30 a.m. That speaks volumes about your level of engagement with our city, and it is refreshing to see. Let me remind you all that tomorrow is the deadline to register to vote in May's election. So if you have not done that, I can't imagine someone would show up at a 7:30 a.m. event with candidates who is not registered to vote, but for those watching online, maybe that may be you, so please remember to register to vote if you have not done so. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so please hold your applause until the end. Please, no video or photos should be taken. Again, this is being recorded, so a video will be available at the end. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. By luck of the draw, we will start with Mr. Solis on the far left and work our way down. After that, I will ask a series of questions, and each candidate will have the opportunity to answer the question. Notice I said answer the question, not address the question, or even worse, talk around the question. You will have the opportunity to answer the question. We'll start with Mr. Villalba and work our way down and back to Mr. Solis for the first question, and then start with Ms. Montoya for the third question, and so on. Now, to the candidates, I have to say, I've been to several of these forums. I've read all your campaign materials, and no offense, but you all kind of sound alike. So, I'm going to help you. I'm going to ask some relatively specific questions today that hopefully will draw out some distinctions amongst the candidates. But I think you can assume that everyone in this room supports road improvements, public safety, affordable housing, thriving neighborhoods, improved education, and ethics at City Hall. So you can take your generic talking points and save them for the next forum, This crowd already supports those things. I urge you to address two specific things in your responses. How specifically are you going to accomplish it, and how specifically are you going to pay for it? That's what we want to hear. All right, so I'll be asking two types of questions. One more traditional question that calls for a narrative answer. You will have 60 seconds for your response. And then I'm going to mix in some what we'll call lightning round questions, which are essentially yes or no questions, because I know politicians love yes or no questions. You will have 10 seconds to answer and briefly explain your answer. I ask you to respect these time limits out of courtesy to the audience. Out of respect to the audience, I will strictly enforce these time limits, and we have a timekeeper right here in front. All right. So let's begin with our opening statements. Mr. Solis.
Well, thank you for having me this morning. I've got to say, I know this is not a debate, it is a mayoral forum, but in some ways, I've already won because I'm the millennial who showed up to a mayoral forum at 7:30 a.m. Listen, my name is Miguel Solis, and I'm the grandson of immigrants who came to this country, one as a refugee, the other seeking economic opportunity, fleeing the Mexican Revolution. They ended up in Port Arthur, Texas. They met each other, fell in love, they had 4 kids. And when my dad, Esteban, was 2 years old, my grandfather passed away in a chemical spill. And so my grandmother, speaking nothing but Spanish, with a 4th grade education, now had 4 kids and little hope in a challenging situation. As I reflect back on their experience, though, I recognize that there was an infrastructure of opportunity that existed for her and my father, really based around 5 major things. 1, a great education. My dad could get a good education, and because of that, number 2, he got a good job that paid him a great wage, which allowed him, number 3, to help his mother pay for their home and make sure that they lived in a safe community, all the while taking public transportation because they didn't have a car everywhere they needed to go. That infrastructure of opportunity is the reason I stand in front of you today as a former DISD teacher, a former DISD Central Administrator, a Dallas school board member elected in 2013, having served as president and vice president, managing and balancing a $1.5 billion budget. I'm running for mayor to rebuild that infrastructure of opportunity. We have a booming economy, a very low unemployment rate, but we need Dallas to work for everyone. And that's why I'm running for mayor, and I'll talk to you about that infrastructure of opportunity today. Thank you.
Did not learn your lesson. Please hold your applause until the end. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. My name is Jason Villalba, and I'm running for mayor of Dallas. What a country we live in. We're a Latino from Oak Cliff, Texas, to parents who were very, very poor, were able to have a kid who they raised in a neighborhood that provided so many opportunities and so many blessings for me. Full ride scholarship to Baylor, then to UT, came back, served on boards and commissions, and now was able to serve on the Texas legislature. During the time I was there, one of the most highly awarded members of the Texas legislature was able to win the best of or recognized by the police, the fire, the realtors, the doctors, every business community out there, every business organization out there supported me. Why? Because I passed legislation that was important. When we needed and we had an existential crisis in water, I authored the bill to fix the process. When we had a situation where the children in our schools were threatened by life-threatening situations, I authored the bill to fix that problem. And now it's the way that we deal with this for the entire country. It's the model for the country. I have a record of getting things done. And by doing that, I've shown on the largest stage in Texas that I'm ready and committed to be your mayor at City Hall. I want to bring that experience, that collaborative nature, that ability to make sure that we have common sense down at City Hall. That's what I'm about, that's what I stand for, and that's what my record says. Thank you.
Well, good morning to all of you. My name is Regina Montoy, and I'm delighted to be with you here this morning at Texas Scottish Rite. Thank you so much. And taking the time for this very important election that is going to determine the future of Dallas for many decades. Here is the vision that I want to bring to Dallas. I want to build upon the successes of Dallas and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to succeed. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I look back to my parents, my father and his dad, who went into the coal mines at the age of 13. My dad, who went was the first person in his family to graduate from high school, from college. And he did that because he went to World War II and went to college on the GI Bill. He met my mother, who didn't get a chance to go to college. She went back to school with 4 kids and got that college degree, and we moved here to Dallas. And this was where I've spent my entire adult life. But my parents gave me that opportunity to dream big. And they said, you can do anything you want. So I went to college at Wellesley, and I went to Harvard Law School. I met my husband there, Paul Coggins, the former United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas. We moved back to Dallas, and Dallas has been the dream city. It has been the city that has allowed me to be the general counsel of Children's Medical Center, to be an attorney at a big firm, to serve with businesses as well, but also to be a part of some of the most important nonprofits here. That's what I am going to bring to this particular position, is being able to bring all of that together. I look forward to talking to you more about the dreams we can have in Dallas if we have that leader who can make that possible for others. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lynn McBee, and I'm running to be the mayor of Dallas. I'm going to spend a minute telling you about myself and my background, and I'm honored that you're here with me this morning. I was born and raised in Freeport, Texas, a small town on the Gulf Coast. I went to public school. I graduated from UT Austin with a degree in biochemistry. I was then an early hire for a startup biotech company, New England Biolabs. As a matter of fact, I was employee 74 of a company that's now over 1,000 people strong. I was a research scientist first, and then I got into business development. As a young woman growing across the United States and into Latin America, setting up business partnerships and distributorships. And today, New England Biolabs is the leader in genomic research, and I'm proud to have been part of the team that built that company. 5 years ago, I became the CEO of an organization, Young Women's Prep Network. We're investors in public education, and that work started right here in Dallas with the partnership with DISD, with the Irma Ronhell Young Women's Leadership School. Since its founding, 100% of our girls have graduated from high school, and 100% have gone to college. When you talk about breaking cycles of poverty, this is how you do it. I've also, for the last 25 years, been working very deeply in some of Dallas's most critical and challenging issues. My work at the bridge with the homeless, my work in domestic violence with the Family Place, my work with girls that have been trafficked at the residential center of Letot, and my work with the Dallas County Community College District, really putting people with jobs. I have a collaborative leadership style. I've been parts of teams, and I've led teams, and I've gotten things done. I'd be honored to be your mayor to continue to collaborate and get things done. Thank you.
Well, good morning, y'all. How are you doing? My name is Scott Griggs, and I'm running to be mayor of the city of Dallas. I'm a lifelong Dallasite who's had the privilege and honor of serving on the Dallas City Council for the last 8 years. And that's given me an opportunity to work with people throughout this city. And what I've realized is together, there's not a problem we can't solve, a challenge we can't meet, or an opportunity we can't seize. I have more faith than ever in you, the people of the city of Dallas. That's why I'm running to be the next mayor. And I recognize that it's time for a change. We need a new kind of mayor in the city of Dallas. For far too long, mayors have solely focused on Dallas, the postcard, the big bridges, the fancy convention center hotel, the horse park probably you've never ridden a horse at, the golf course that's publicly owned but privately run that you've probably never played around a golf at. And so it's time for a change. We need a mayor that's going to focus on Dallas, a city that we live in. Dallas, a city that works for all of us. And I know our shared values can get us there. We believe in transparency and accountability in government, safe, strong neighborhoods, and focusing on what matters, high wages, particularly for our police officers and firefighters. Taking care of our streets, our parks, and our rec centers. It is time for a renewed emphasis on the basics. And that's what I intend on doing. And on day one, I'm ready to get started. With my leadership and experience on the Dallas City Council, I will go to work for you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Ablon. It's fun to walk in. I saw a school teacher of mine, and she still said hello. I saw a couple people who mentored me when I started in business here 30 years ago. And I saw 2 people here who I went to breakfast with every Tuesday a dozen years ago when I started my company. We did that together. That was pretty fun. It's no different than when my family came here 130 years ago as immigrants to a great place. It's no different than why we're all sitting up here so we can hand that on to our kids. And if we're going to do that, if we are going to do that, we also have to reconcile some of the unintended consequences and some of the bad challenges that haven't been resolved yet for what we have as a city. Mr. Chapman listed them, and I'm glad, and he's going to push us to specificity. And I'm glad, and I look forward to that. So what you're going to hear me talk about is together, building bridges out of barriers. You're going to hear me talk about building for tomorrow, today. You're going to hear an urgency of the moment now. And you're going to hear that very deeply intertwined with ethics. You can't say that enough, and cleaning it up. We have talked about north, south, east, and west repeatedly. And I look forward to when this conversation someday is all about one Dallas. Not east, west, north, or Dallas, but the all of us, one Dallas. I look forward to the conversation. I look forward to having it together. Thank you very much.
My name is Albert Black. I was born right here in Dallas, Texas. Went through Dallas public schools. My father was a doorman at the Baker Hotel. He opened doors for the leaders of our city. He would come home and talk to his son, me, and my 5 sisters about the leaders that he would open the door for. And he wanted his boy to grow up and be one of those leaders. Well, I've had an opportunity over the years to follow a lot of people and learn from some of the best in Dallas, Texas. Some of the best business leaders and civic leaders that anyone could ever imagine. I've had a wonderful life being a follower. You know, it's taken me all around the world, and it's taken me to venues such as Washington, D.C. and Austin, Texas, and I've learned to do the work of Dallas, Texas. Civically, I've done work in healthcare as well as housing. We've done work at college and university board. I don't think anybody on this panel or panels before has had the civic resume that I've got. For 36 years, we've grown and developed a company along with my wife, Gwyneth, On Target Supplies and Logistics, where we've employed people, improved infrastructure, added to the tax base, and developed leaders in communities that needed it the most. I'm real proud to be running for mayor of Dallas, Texas, even though I do find it a little difficult to be called a politician. I'm getting used to it. I'm out every day working hard for your support. I hope that I can get it. My name is Albert Black. I want to be your mayor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Johnson, and I'm running for mayor of Dallas because Dallas is the city that gave me my opportunity. I was born and raised here in Dallas, and I grew up in West Dallas and Oak Cliff, and I grew up very poor. But I was given a tremendous opportunity through the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Dallas and a first grade teacher at my local public school to attend Green Hill School on a full scholarship, and I took every advantage of that opportunity. After graduating from Green Hill, I was able to go to Harvard, Princeton, and the University of Pennsylvania, all on scholarship. And then I returned to Dallas, where I began practicing law as a public finance attorney. I got married, started a family, and eventually ran for the Texas House of Representatives, where I currently represent Dallas in the state legislature. I want to make sure that every kid in Dallas has the same opportunities that I had, and even more than I had. And I also think it's really cool that we could have the opportunity in this election to elect a mayor that for the first time in Dallas's history, a kid who grew up in a neighborhood like mine in Oak Cliff or West Dallas or South Dallas or Pleasant Grove, anywhere in the southern sector or southern Dallas could say, that's the mayor of Dallas. He grew up in my neighborhood. He came from a place just like I came from, and I can do the exact same thing. We have a very important duty to discharge in this election, and that is to pick the next mayor. We need to pick someone who has got the integrity, the intelligence, the judgment, and the leadership skills to actually get things done around the horseshoe. And my record in the legislature proves that I have a track record of doing all of those things and being that type of leader. So I'm looking forward to gaining your support. Thank you.
Thank you all. Our first question will be for Mr. Villalba. This is a 60-second question. You have 60 seconds to answer. What is the one policy position an opponent has taken in this campaign that you disagree with the most, and why?
Policy position that I would disagree with most relates to economic development and its fettered and restricted measures. Mr. Griggs, a wonderful, genuine public servant, has talked about what his economic development plan would look like. It is limited, it is hamstringed, and it is restricted. The reason that Frisco was able to get Legacy Park, the reason that Plano was able to get Toyota, is because their economic development plan was one that was unfettered and was laissez-faire and allowed the incentives to work the way that they work. That is not what Mr. Grigg's plan says. He would like to socially engineer the plan that would hamstring businesses all over Texas. They're not going to come to Dallas because they would not be interested in having the money with those strings tied to it. My policy is unfettered, unregulated, agile, aggressive, ambitious, and will bring big businesses like Amazon HQ2 back to Dallas, and other businesses that we lost to Frisco back to Dallas. I want $6 billion in Fair Park, not in Frisco.
Actually, I also chaired the Mayor's Task Force on Poverty, and one thing I learned from that task force was that we have too many silos in Dallas, that the city works this way, then you have the county working one way, DCCD working one way, the DISD. I want to break that down. But I have heard some of our candidates, and I won't just identify one, but several, who have talked about how we need to outsource some of our work, say with the homelessness. Thank you so much to the Salvation Army. Thank you so much to the organizations that are stepping up and doing this kind of work. But the city of Dallas has to be able to invest in its people, has to take the responsibility for these issues that affect our community. And I want the city to be taking the lead, working hand in hand with these public-private partnerships. So I support the public-private partnerships, but I want the city of Dallas to take responsibility, and I want to see that coming before the city council to ensure that the work is actually getting done the way it needs to be done. And that's something that distinguishes me from some of the other candidates. I know how to break down those silos because I did that with the Mayor's Task Force on Poverty.
Ms. McBee, what is the one policy question an opponent has taken in this campaign that you disagree with the most, and why?
Sure. I've heard many of my colleagues say if we just grew the pie, then we would have economic development. And I think what we need to do is reverse that. I think we need to think about investing in basics. If we invest in basics and making sure that we're a safe city, making sure that we've got great infrastructure with roads and the right drainage and code compliance, and making sure that we champion public education, then the economic development is going to come. People are not going to want to invest if they don't think they're safe, if they don't think the roads are right, and that it's not good for development. So as I sit in here, my colleagues talk about growing the pie, and if we just grow the pie, then we're going to attract all these companies, and we're going to attract business and all these things. We've got to take care of the basics. We have to make sure that our municipal government is offering the public safety, the infrastructure, and that we've got a good public education system. And the mayor being a champion for public education, if we bring all those things together, we will have economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. On economic development, I support common sense economic development. What do I oppose? I oppose giveaways. I oppose the $3 million that we gave to Costco to build a Costco off of Central Expressway. Have any of you ever been there? You can't get into the parking lot. They're making money hand over the fist. Why do they need your money to open that store? I oppose those types of economic giveaways. I'll give you another example. We gave ESPN $300,000 to put on a football game the day after Christmas that no one watched, and they barely played a quarter. Why in the world did we do that with your money that could go to police officers and firefighters and fixing our streets? I oppose the economic development boondoggles that have gone on here for too long. On economic development, I believe in a common sense approach. If a business wants to come to Dallas, particularly Southern Dallas, and they want our tax abatements, then they need to hire people from the city of Dallas, and they need to pay them a good wage. That kind of common sense approach is going to move this city forward, and we are going to avoid the economic development boondoggles of the past. Thank you.
I'll answer your question. I'm going to respectfully disagree with the position Mr. Griggs has taken on the comprehensive housing policy, and I'm going to be very specific about it. When you take your first shot at something like that, you've got to get it right. We all know we have 20,000 units. We know the big idea. That's correct. But it was 56-44 on housing for affordable housing versus multifamily. If you look at the age, we're the youngest age of any large city in the United States. If you look at your demographic trend of mobility, if you look at your price point you're trying to target, what you realize is in that price point, you have to get to a more affordable, which means rental. We should do it 60-40. That's just not knowing the market. And the second piece of it is the notion of using the land bank as a tax deferment by separating the house, the improvements from the property. If you do that without a time metric on it, you undermine the market and you also undermine your long-term cash flow. We have to revise both of those people to have a viable economic policy by which we will see the work done properly.
I'm very proud that at all compass points of our city, I've said the same things to people, no matter what the audience has been. One of the things that I've noticed with Mr. Griggs, and I'll be specific in saying what I disagree with, and that is the policy as it relates to burdening new employers, or burden any employer for that matter, with some of the compensation requirements and some of the health care requirements that he's asking for them to bear. If we don't have regional agreements, or if we don't have a statewide agreement, well then we're putting the people, those small companies and those emerging growth companies in the city of Dallas at a competitive disadvantage. I don't think we need to do that. I don't think that we need to let one street be the determinant of whether you're going to be in Dallas or you're going to move your city one block over, one street over, and receive an advantage because you don't have those burdens. I'm asking for citizens to think about that.
So I have the benefit of having served in the legislature and making public policy on a daily basis in a very complex and contentious environment. And I've also had the benefit of studying public policy formally at the graduate level. And what I can tell you is the objection I have to the approach that several candidates have taken, not just one, is the idea that before you've actually gotten into the situation where you are actually working with other stakeholders and working with other elected officials, that you know so certainly exactly what needs to be done. That level of certainty is actually somewhat dangerous because it closes your mind to new ideas. We don't know, for example, we just don't know as candidates running for mayor without a criminology background or without consulting with the police chief or other experts exactly how many police we need to hire. We know we need to hire more, but the idea that in order to impress a debate audience, we're going to throw out an exact number, it needs to be exactly 1,000, the salary needs to be exactly 65,000, is not exactly how policy works, and we need to be more honest about that.
Well, I started this by talking about the infrastructure of opportunity. And for me, the key element that drives everything else is education. It's the reason why I've dedicated over a decade of my life now to the Dallas Independent School District. But one of the things that I hear our candidates talk about quite a bit is the fact that, well, City Hall has no place in education. We need to support our educational ecosphere, but we've got no role because there's a jurisdictional barrier. If we take that approach moving forward, we miss a grand opportunity to take a revolution happening in our public education system and bolster it exponentially. I was on a panel yesterday in Austin with the mayor of Fort Worth, Betsy Price, who I now consider a very good friend. And there was an idea that I came up with about scrubbing our city real estate, and any underutilized city real estate could potentially be looked at as a way to put more pre-K children in classrooms. It's an innovative approach. And when I said it, Mayor Betsy Price said, "Miguel, we're already doing it in Fort Worth. It can be done." We need our mayor to be an education mayor because education will be the key to changing the course of this city.
Thank you all. Ms. Montoya, the next question is for you. This will be a lightning round question, 10-second answer.
Okay.
Here's the question. If Amazon came to Dallas today and said, we'll build a second headquarters right there in Dallas if Dallas agrees to give us the exact same deal that Crystal City, Virginia gave us, would you agree to that deal?
I don't know exactly what Crystal City gave them, but I want to get more details. But I do want to bring new business to Dallas, so I would absolutely listen to that, and that's one of the ways we're going to create economic opportunity, but I want them to employ our people.
Ms. McBee.
Without all the details, I would say yes, because I want to attract Amazon here for the economic development, but I would want them to employ people that are our citizens.
Not without more of a community benefit. I would say no. The deal was too much cash and not enough for the community and for the city. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was no cash. It was all incentives. They're a diverse company. They support diversity. They're a company of the future. And it was $24,000 a person. The payoff wasn't 30 years. It was somewhere between 4 and 8 years, and we didn't write the check. We just received the benefit.
Yes, we'd have some real infrastructure issues to deal with. That type of, right now we're having 3.2% unemployment, full employment being 4%. We'd have some real people infrastructure as well as housing infrastructure to deal with, but I think we're up to the challenge.
I'm in favor of offering an incentive to a company like Amazon to come here, but not on the exact same terms. They were very, very expensive terms, and that's why we didn't offer them.
I don't know the Crystal City deal. I'm inclined to have corporate relocations here to the city, so I'm inclined to go after an Amazon. And looking at the Dallas deal, Amazon U, I thought was a tremendous opportunity for the future of this city.
I want to separate myself from everyone else on this panel. Unequivocally, yes, I would do it without restriction and bring those jobs to Dallas. I don't care if they live in Plano or Frisco or wherever else. Every dollar they spend in our city is a dollar to increase our tax base. I am for it 100%.
All right, thank you. Next question, this will go to Ms. McBee first, 60 seconds to answer. We've talked about infrastructure, we've alluded to roads. Where are you going to find the money to improve it?
Sure. Currently, right now, we have $550 million in bond and general fund money. We have an infrastructure maintenance plan that the City Council, I believe, adopted last fall. And so if we stay on that plan, then we can push those dollars out. You know, it's about making things a priority in our city that should be, that municipal government should pay for. It's about public safety, and then it's about roads and streets. We've got the money. We need to make sure that we're following the plan and that we're pushing the money out. Because without the roads, without the sidewalks, without the alleys, we're not going to have people that want to live here. We're not going to have economic development. So we've got to get the basics right, and we've got the money. We've got to push it out. Thank you.
We can do two things for our streets. One, we will have more money when we stop the economic development boondoggles I talked about before. And number two, which is just as important, is we need to change the way we do our street contracts. Right now, they're based on low bid. And who in here is tired of the endless street work in the city of Dallas? Who here is tired that a week after a street is fixed, the potholes come back? And even worse than that, sometimes a week after the street's fixed by the city of Dallas, the water department or Atmos comes in and tears it up, that brand new street. It's terrible. We can change all of this just by changing the way that we do the contracting. It needs not only be based on price, but based on the reputation of the contractor. Let's stop giving contracts to bad contractors who do bad road work. They keep getting the bids and game the system. Let's also tie them to a calendar. They have a certain date to finish the work. If they don't meet that date, we financially penalize them. Last, let's make sure that Streets talks to the water department and Atmos before they begin their work. We can change the way we do our contracts from low bid to best value, and is going to save us millions and thousands of hours that you sit in traffic. Thank you.
First, let's define the problem. We had $550 million in the last bond package. Our need is $5 billion. That's a technical answer. How do you do that? Number one, I disagree. You have to grow the economy. We need to grow that tax base. We need to grow jobs. That gives a reoccurring revenue stream by which we can support bonds. Secondly, we have to support the things that the city only can do, which is police and fire and streets. We know that. I would advocate we look at other places where I think we're leaking a little bit. We have an airport at DFW that we can look at privatizing. We have water that we're subsidizing suburbs. There's other places. And lastly, I'm out of time. Oh, I have 30 more seconds. Great, I'm going to talk about the most important thing. I've got the time to talk about the most important thing. Dallas is a post-World War II suburban urban model. That's how we've been developed. Now everybody knows we're morphing to these centers of walkability, right? So we're going to morph to a hybrid design of suburban and urban. If we prioritize those dollars to support a suburban urban hybrid model, then we have less need than we think we do and better prioritization.
Right now we have 3 different bonds that haven't been completely let. And I think that's a shame when citizens all over our city are clamoring for improvements in their neighborhoods. They want neighborhood beautification, stabilization, and housing remediation focused on streets, with that streets and lights being the primary deal. So when we're talking about infrastructure, we should start there. Oftentimes infrastructure is going toward new projects. We want them to go toward new projects, but we don't want it to be at the negligence of the neighborhoods that are there now. Citizens wants to believe that when we pass a bond program that we're not passing over them. And too often it feels like it to the everyday citizens that are not engaged in some of the more sophisticated business organizations dealing with the more complicated issues around the bonds. They're wanting to say, what does it mean to me? And we should answer that question to them by providing the infrastructure that they need from those bond programs.
You know, we don't have to always go it alone on these infrastructure projects. For example, the intersection of Garland, Gaston, and Grand Avenue in Dallas, one of the most dangerous intersections in Dallas, I was able to get TxDOT to pay to renovate that intersection. They're going to completely redo that intersection. It's not going to cost Dallas any money. TxDOT's going to pay for it. There are other levels of government that we can tap into and get our fair share of state dollars and federal dollars to help with some of this. We do have bond proceeds available to do these things that we haven't used. I'm a public finance attorney. I've been involved in many of those bond issuances, so that's available to us. But we don't have to always dip into our own pocket for these things. If you elect someone mayor who's got relationships in Washington or relationships in Austin and knows how to use all levels of government and get them working together, Dallas can actually get some help and not have to actually go into our taxpayers' pocketbooks all the time for these projects. So we'll go to Austin, we'll go to TxDOT like I've been doing, and we'll get more money to help us with these things.
I've had to deal with many bonds in Dallas Independent School District, and I know that, as has been mentioned a little earlier, a lot of times the way that we contract these bond dollars out lead to changes in the work, an additional expense, and those additional expenses compound themselves until ultimately you've run out of your bond dollars and half the work was done. And sometimes it wasn't even done well. So the first thing we need to do is with those $550 million that was suggested and talked about and when we passed in 2017, we need to ensure we are getting our money's worth. We're getting the value that comes with the work related to those dollars, and we need to hold contractors accountable. The second thing, though, is this. Raise your hand if yesterday in driving through Dallas you saw a crane somewhere in Dallas. Yeah, we are a continued developing city, and all of that construction also has an effect on our roads. And as we are going to work with developers in our city, we need to make sure that they're good corporate citizens as well. And good corporate citizenship means if you tear up our roads, you help us with our roads, because that is ultimately a quality of life issue, and that matters to the future of the city.
The city of Dallas in the last 8 years has seen an expansion of its economic base by 40%. Tell me in this room by a raise of hands, how many of you have seen a 40% increase in the quality of your roads? That's what I thought. 0. The reason we have not had that is because there's been no leadership in City Hall to be able to affect the kind of infrastructure input that we need to deploy the additional expansion of the base, to deploy the bonds proceeds that we have not been able to utilize, and to effectively cut the way that we are dealing with contractors who are overbidding this. You want a new kind of mayor? Look back 8 years. That's what you're going to get. The only way we move forward as a city is if we have a new outside leader that understands it. I agree with Representative Johnson, Representative, who I worked with for 6 years. I agree with Representative
You served with
Johnson.
him for 6 years, Jason.
You want a chief lobbyist in City Hall that will go down to Austin and understand how to get those resources.
I was the vice chair of the DFW Airport and board, and I also chaired the operations committee, and you can imagine the kind of infrastructure that we had to deal with at the airport. Some of the issues that we see in Dallas are these, that we have just not had the kind of work in the contracting that has been done to actually create penalties for people who have not done the work that they need to do correctly. And I'll give you some examples. All of us know that it gets hot in Dallas in the summertime. How many times have you driven down the road and you see the asphalt, whatever it is, melting in front of you? Clearly, this has not been done correctly in terms of figuring out the questions. But I also want to bring up something else to all of us, too, and why this is so critical for our community. You know, when we're talking about the cranes, we're talking about the development. Remember, there are parts of Dallas where there are no cranes because they don't have the infrastructure available. In order for us to prioritize how we're going to build parts of southern Dallas, we've got to make this a priority. We need a mayor who understands how to work with all of the city of Dallas to ensure that we've got the best kind of contractors working on this issue. Thank you.
For For the next question, we'll start with Mr. Griggs. This will be a lightning round question, 10 seconds to answer. Turnout in municipal elections in Dallas is pathetic. Would you be in favor of moving municipal elections to November to coincide with state and federal elections in order to increase turnout?
No, because the runoff will be in December just before Christmas, and you think if turnout is low in May, wait till you see an election just before Christmas and a runoff.
No, because we're trying to get away from party politics. We don't need Austin. We don't need Washington. We want Dallas to be Dallas. I don't think party politics, that would be at the bottom of a long 18-page ballot, and it would end up Democrat and Republican. We need this to be Dallas.
The political winds change. In one season, it would be Democrat. The next season, it would be Republican. Dallas would be swinging back and forth, and we wouldn't have the advantage to campaign, really, on good ideas and activities versus partisan politics. No.
The best thing about a Dallas mayoral election is the fact that it is nonpartisan, and I wouldn't want to change that by putting it on a partisan ballot and adding partisanship to these elections, nor would I want to have these elections buried at the bottom of an already very long ballot.
I'm on the record many times saying no, but I've had conversations with Mike Rawlings because I know that this is it's an existential issue as it relates to the future of our city. I'm open to the idea of studying ways that we can departisanize local races if we move them to November, but that's going to take studying. But right now, I'm a no, and I have been.
I trust the people. The more of you that have a voice in who is the next mayor of Dallas, the better. I'm for it.
I would support it as well. 6 and 7% is ridiculous. And a Saturday election, so I would support moving it and it would save money for us too.
I would not support it. I would like to keep it a nonpartisan election, and I'd like for us to focus on how we get more people to turn out and vote on May 4th. That's what the discussion needs to be.
Thank you. Mr. Ablon, next question. We'll start with you. We've seen several examples in the last years of Dallas City Council members, former Dallas City Council members, pleading guilty to taking bribes. Does that mean our efforts at enforcing ethics laws are working, or does it mean we have a corruption problem at City Hall? And if the latter, what specifically can you do as mayor to address it?
Great. I'm going to talk fast because I want to go back and take my precious time to talk about something that was said. I disagree significantly with Mr. Johnson. TxDOT did get involved in that one intersection. That's what screwed it up. They did not let the neighborhood dynamics come into play. Stop.
60 seconds. Keep going.
If y'all haven't noticed, I have an issue with the timing mechanism here.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. That $5 billion is city, it's not state. Yes, there's a number of items. I'm going to hit the key one, which is I would propose that we no longer have the city council be the judge and jury of the city council. We need to have an external process by which, if there are ethical items, they get addressed and the punitive measures are larger. You cannot let a group be its own judge and jury. That has proven not to work. That would be the first step of a proposal. And I look forward to putting a proposal out this week in great specificity.
You know, I'm not willing to go out there and attempt to amend the 10 Commandments every 2 years. There's a set of rules that the city council abides by. The infractions that we've had, people have known when they broke those rules that they were breaking the rules. They were breaking the rules, they were breaking the law, it was immoral, and they should have been punished long before they were caught. They knew it was wrong. There was nothing we can do in the form of ethics reform that was going to keep them from breaking rules. They were out to break those rules. So what I'm saying about what we need to go forward with, we need to go forward with more draconian kind of measures when we have bad politics. I've got into this race with the number one issue being good governance. Just being a citizen, being at home with a wife and children, I can't take it anymore. I can't take another embarrassing circumstance where the city of Dallas is on national television with another convicted felon. It's all of our responsibility to do something about this.
I came into office on the wake of a City Hall corruption scandal, and I started my legislative career filing ethics reform legislation to reform our corrupt system from from Austin. And I have legislation pending right now, House Bill 4370, that would eliminate the ability for a local city council person or city official from being able to be bribed in the way that our city officials have been bribed. So I would actually continue to push for reforms that would actually eliminate the source of the corruption, but I would also, as mayor, push for a reform of our city code of ethics because there's no teeth in it. We have these ethics rules, but there's really no consequence for breaking them. You can take contributions from people you're not supposed to, minors, or people, or bundle contributions illegally, and there's really no consequence to that, and that's really the problem. The ethics code needs to be enforced by the city attorney's office and have real consequences for breaking it, and we shouldn't put the entire burden on the citizenry to discover the violations. The city attorney's office should be more vigilant and more active in this process, and that is how we're going to clean up government.
Day one, in my administration, we will start a scrub of the City Code of Ethics, because I agree, it's a toothless document in many ways. And if you don't have real accountability tied to that review and those ethics, then you get people that do things that we have seen, even in this election. And I mean, there's news yesterday of someone turning their nose to the fact that they did not do what they said they were going to do as a council member, and people get away with that. That's not okay in this city. If you are elected to serve your constituents and you're going to swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend our Constitution and our city, then you are going to be held accountable if you break the rules. We need people of high integrity that are going to go into these offices and deliver for the people. And we start on day one with our code of ethics, we scrub that, and then we make our system more transparent. It shouldn't take journalists and gadflies to find information like we're finding today.
There is a culture of corruption in City Hall, and we need to clean that rat's nest up. I agree with almost everybody on this panel. Mr. Representative Johnston, his legislation makes eminent sense. I would support it and vocally support it. I agree with the trustee. We know
Solis.
We know something must be done. People must be held accountable. If we incorporate by reference the Texas Ethics Code into the Dallas City Election Code, the Texas Rangers, the Attorney General, everyone who would be responsible at the state level could keep us accountable. It is not enough that a nasty article is written in Dallas Morning News when somebody does something bad. There needs to be a rap on the knuckles and a trip to the courts if somebody violates these rules. We must have more accountability. I will clean up the rat's nest downtown, and we will make sure that we fix this once and for all.
You know, we just had a question asking about why we have the turnout that is so low. And this is part of the reason. People have lost faith in our city government, and they just think that it doesn't matter who you're going to elect. This is what you're going to see. So we have to create a culture that people feel confident in our city government. One of the first things that I would do is meet with the city attorney and say, how can we get a couple of attorneys working on these issues? Because it is the case. Things are not transparent right now. If you try to look at some of these different forms, it'll take you hours. I've spent some time looking at them. I can't even find some of these. It is so difficult to find on our system. The other part is that we have to scrub really our entire system to make it more transactional oriented and so that it's more objective than subjective. Right now, even if you go down to Jefferson Avenue and you try to get a permit, the faster you go through the permitting process, it's because of who you know, and you get up the queue. We can't continue that kind of process, and we see too many of those instances all across City Hall and all across city government where we are allowing objectivity to lose out to subjectivity, and that's where you start having the problems.
We must establish a culture of honesty at City Hall. We have small things like campaign contributions that are illegal that lead to big things like bribes. If we've got no culture of honesty, small things turn into big things and then people are going to jail. So on day one, you'd have everyone sign a code of conduct and a code of ethics. We've got to hold ourselves accountable. I'd like to say we could all self-police and it would be okay, but we can't. So we've got to start with that basic, let's all sign a code of conduct. Second, let's look at when people come to do business with the city, developers, lobbyists, that they're signing in, that there's a record of the activity when they're there and why they're there. And do we need to tape and record meetings so that they are open and we are transparent about it? And then lastly, when people break the rules, there have got to be consequences. There have got to be some punitive measures, Class C misdemeanor. If we start to establish some things that hold people accountable and there are consequences for actions and rules that are broken, then it will stop. Thank you.
Ethics is a priority, and we've got to do better at City Hall. As part of my ethics plan, first, low-income housing tax credit projects. We've had 3 council members over more than a decade get in trouble with those. We need to put a rule in place that developers, when they file for low-income housing tax credit projects, are not allowed to talk to council members, and council members are not allowed to talk to them. There needs to be a period where the 2 sides don't talk until the item comes publicly to the Dallas City Council. Number 2, so many of our decisions at City Hall are made behind closed doors. Have you ever watched our meetings, and then all of a sudden we go into executive session? We need to start recording the executive sessions and then release them once the item is decided. And there's no reason to keep the information secret. That will increase our transparency. Number 3, and most important, we need to follow the money. We need a single electronic database with a dashboard that has lobbyist reports in it that are filed by lobbyists, council member reports about who lobbied them on which matter, developer reports about their financial interests and matters, and the contributions they give into council members. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Black, we'll start with you for the next question, which is a lightning round question.
Okay.
10 seconds.
All right.
The question is about endorsements. All of you have received endorsements from a number of individuals and organizations, both. Which endorsement are you most proud of and why?
I'm most proud of the endorsement I received from my longtime friend, Senator Ross West. Years ago in Frazier Courts, Ross, the senator, was my paper boy. My family's paper boy, and now I'm his paper boy, I guess.
Thank you.
But he was the first to endorse, and I'm proud of him.
I'm proud of the breadth of the endorsements that I have. I have over 250 people who've been willing to stand publicly with me, folks from elected officials like Phil Ritter on the Dallas County Community College District Board, to business leaders, to faith leaders.
I'm very proud of my endorsements. I bring people from all across the city and all ideological realms as well. People like Melanie and Tim Byrne, Garrett and Cecilia Boone, Cindy and Howard Wachowski. And also, I'm proud of the people that have invested in our campaign. We've got over 600 individual donors to my campaign, from $1 all the way to $5,000, so I'm proud of that.
I'm most proud of the endorsement from my mother-in-law. Anybody that can get the endorsement from the mother of their wife should be mayor of Dallas.
I'm proud of my endorsements because I was particularly, I wanted to make sure that we had the diversity of the entire city. You know, our city is one of the most incredibly diverse cities, 25% foreign born, majority minority city for so long, and those of my endorsements represent that and reflect that as well.
I'm proud of the wide array of endorsements that I have from all of the work that I've done for the last 25 years. I have over 500 endorsements from people that I've worked with at the Bridge, to the Family Place, to philanthropists, to just volunteers. And so it's a wide breadth of people from my community service. Thank you.
I'm proud of all the endorsements, but I was asked to pick one. I'll pick Sandy Grayson. Very proud of her endorsement. I grew up in North Dallas. I live in Oak Cliff now, and so it's very proud to have your endorsement, Sandy. Thank you.
Jason stole my thunder because I was going to say my wife, but she might pull it. So I'm not going to go there. I would say the former city leadership, whether it's a Marcos Ronquillo or an Ed Oakley, a Ron Natinsky, that have been there, done that, and have faith in what I'm talking about. So I appreciate them.
All right. Mr. Johnson, the next question is for you. We'll start with you. We're all too aware of the economic development inequality between North Dallas and South Dallas. We all know that needs to change. We all know others have tried to change it. As mayor, what specifically are you going to do to encourage economic development in the entire southern sector?
I'm focusing on workforce readiness because I think focusing on the state of the people in the southern sector has to date the actual buildings and the things that we think of when we talk about development. Because as I've said many times before, you can throw a Starbucks into an area in southern Dallas where the economic development isn't there already, and no one can afford the $8 cup of coffee or whatever they're charging for coffee at Starbucks. I don't really drink coffee. But my point is we have to actually get more money in people's pockets in the southern sector. And focusing on workforce readiness is exactly how we'll do that. If people can move from unemployment and low-skill employment to mid-skill employment, meaning employment that doesn't even require a college degree but does require some form of higher education in the form of a certificate or some sort of training, they'll make more money. And then the development actually follows that, because basically retail and other forms of development, they follow rooftops and they follow income. So we got to focus on the income of the folks in the southern sector. We've got to move more people out of poverty into the middle class, and the development will follow. It's what we have to do. Otherwise, we're just wishing.
The promise of Grow South existed before Mike Rawlings, and it will exist after Mike Rawlings. Mike Rawlings should be given credit for highlighting the investment opportunities that could happen in the southern sector and what happens in southern Dallas if we invest from an economic standpoint. What I intend on doing is making sure that we keep the spirit of Grow South going. Let's tweak some of the issues with the fund, but we also need to make sure that we build, as I've mentioned, an infrastructure of opportunity. Let's keep the educational advancements going in southern Dallas. Let's focus on workforce development. But as mayor, I'll double workforce development that already exists right now in partnerships between DISD, DCCC, UNT Dallas, and 75 industry partners that get kids into a job that allows them to make a good wage. Let's get our public transportation system working for people in southern Dallas that get them to their job on time. And they've got to have jobs closer to their home. So we'll do things like making sure that we have high impact development that could be placed there today, not wait 10 or 20 years for corporate relocations, but incentivize maybe even North Dallas businesses through incentives to get down to southern Dallas and get people working today. And then once they get those dollars, let's keep them in southern Dallas.
Let us cultivate the embryonic development we're already seeing in the southern sector. Trinity Groves, the Bottoms, the Cedars. We're seeing new development. We're seeing new development in retail, in finance, and in residential. We've got to continue that by providing incentive opportunities for the people of that community. Unless we provide some sort of a tax abatement or some sort of a incentive to get the community to embrace that growth rather than investors from outside of the sector, then we will not be successful. But if we provide those opportunities for the people in the southern sector, like my family who still lives in Oak Cliff, we can continue to grow and see that kind of growth. I was a member of the board of Grow South. Excellent vision, but we must maximize its capability by having greater vision and boldness in our approach going forward. I've talked about $1 billion of new investment in the southern sector. We're going to do it by providing some really unique opportunities.
So let me give you a lay of the land here in Dallas. Dallas is a tale of two cities. It's a tale of two cities economically. Half of Dallas earns less than $50,000. We have neighborhoods of concentrated poverty in every single city council district. 13% of Dallas has a 9th grade education or less. 48% of Dallas has less than a high school degree. And we have the lowest median income of any of the big cities in Texas. Clearly, we're going to have to do this systemically. We're going to have to do just as we did on the Mayor's Task Force on Poverty. A leader who takes every single issue and says, how are we going to address it? So let's start about education. We need to start talking about the GED programs, getting people to get those educations so that they can qualify for those jobs that are coming from companies like Amazon. Then we need to start looking at our neighborhoods of concentrated poverty. We can't just zero in on one. We've got to look at transportation issues. It's an expensive city to be poor in. We've got to eliminate the obstacles that are out there for people, including transportation. Our housing, we're down 20,000 units. We can't create income. These are the kinds of issues that we need a mayor that will look at all of this systemically.
So we must start by investing in basics. We must make sure that we're safe and that we've got the amount of police force. We've got to make sure that we've got great roads, streets, sidewalks, alleys, trash pickup, code enforcement. There's not going to be development, there's not going to be growth if we don't have the basics. We also must continue to champion the work that DISD and DCCC is doing. The early college high schools, 19 early college high schools right now, that when kids graduate, they have an associate's degree and a high school diploma, and they're able to get a job. They've got a trade, a skill, or vocation, and they're in the workforce. We've also got to look at how we activate some of our great resources that we have here. Fair Park. Can you imagine if we would put an El Centro in the Women's Museum and then we started to activate that whole complex with arts and entertainment? We've already got the DART there. Talk about the housing development that could be there. We've got to start to activate assets that we have, but it's got to start with number one, the basics, being safe and making sure that we've got the streets, the roads, the drainage, and that we continue to have a great public education system.
Thank you. On economic development in Southern Dallas, two things. You have to take care of zoning and small projects. Does everyone know the Bishop Arts District and everything that's going on in North Oak Cliff? I've been the council member for that part of town for 8 years. There's no part of Southern Dallas that has grown more than Oak Cliff in the last 8 years. And those two things. One, zoning that is not restrictive. Zoning that lets the market decide what to put in. And then number two, what we forget too often in Dallas, the power of small projects. The Bishop Arts District, a small $2 million investment between the buildings, street trees, sidewalks, nice places to cross the street, benches. If you make those small investments between the buildings that only cost $2 million, you revitalize an area. Look at Jefferson, what's happened down there. And there's other projects like this that can happen throughout Southern Dallas. We don't need one big project. The project at Redbird Mall is fantastic and I support it, but we can't forget lots of small projects throughout Southern Dallas, spending $2 million here, $2 million there. We'll revitalize all of Southern Dallas. Thank you.
First, I want to go back to the last question. We have 3 sitting council people up there. We have a former police chief. We have another former councilwoman, and we have a mayor. When we talk about ethics, we need to be very careful that we don't make a ubiquitous statement. Never heard an ethics issue about them. Thank you to y'all for your service. Hypothetically, what we're talking about is you go in a neighborhood and has water and sewer that's 70 years old and broken or not functional for what we want it to do. Hypothetically, we're talking about a street that's broken. Hypothetically, we're talking about a neighborhood that's not connected to a trail system. Hypothetically, we're talking about zoning that doesn't meet a future need. Hypothetically, we're talking about great access. Hypothetically, we're talking about debt and equity having access to that market where a board will approve it. These are not hypotheticals. This is exactly what I walked into the design district 10 years ago. Been there, done that, and look forward very much to helping each neighborhood understand its vibe, its ethos, what it can be, what it is, and what it wants to be, and supporting it for the future. Every neighborhood needs to be diverse and different. That's the beauty of a city.
I'm very proud of my record as chairman of the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations traveling around the world, attracting companies back to Dallas, Texas. I also believe in a Drucker principle of building on your islands of health and strength. We have a large couple of industries here in Dallas. One is an entertainment industry, another one is the healthcare industry. I believe that there are companies around the world that want to come right here to Dallas, Texas, that need the kind of land mass to operate here in our favorable conditions in Dallas. I think with that kind of invitation, with the kind of incentives, with the kind of enthusiasm that city leaders can put forth to recruit these companies, we can get them back here, couple them with the kind of workforce we have, and produce the kind of industry we need south of the Trinity River with the kind of inclusion that is real and not making a mockery out of the inclusion that we have today that contributes to the public corruption that I'm running on.
Thank you. Mr. Solis, we'll start with you on the next question, which is about our education system, something you might know a little bit about. Everyone agrees that we need to improve our education system. But as mayor, realistically, what can you do to implement that?
There are a whole host of things that we can do. Number one, we need to push our city towards universal pre-K. And we can do it working with the Dallas Independent School District and Richardson Independent School District. Right now, there are 20,000 kids that could be getting high-quality early child care in pre-K, but they don't, simply because we don't have the facilities to place these children in. And right now, our state legislators down in Austin are looking at a bill. Today's the big day for our state legislators, House Bill 3. If they pass it, and these 50 amendments don't put a poison pill in it, then our state legislators will deliver on the promise that we know our city needs. Full-day 4-year-old pre-K funding. So let's make sure our legislators get the job done for us down in Austin. Second, what we can do, double the workforce readiness program that exists right now between DISD and DCCC. As mayor, I'll double it because I'll find the other set of business partners we need. After-school programming. Let's better use our recreation centers and libraries and streamline services. And lastly, stop the summer slide. Too many kids right now lose education in the summer. As mayor, I'll grow the City of Learning program, which exists between the city and Big Thought.
As the father of 3 DISD public school children, there's nothing more important to me than the success of DISD. But as mayor, I recognize that the Dallas Independent School District is independent. I can champion reform initiatives that I have supported. Trustee Solis has supported these issues, and I must commend him. He's done a fantastic job in DISD, and I'm thankful for his leadership. As mayor, I will continue to champion those kinds of initiatives that make sense for our children. Nothing is more important, nothing is more critical to economic development and the development of the city than the success of our children and our independent school district with DISD. During the time I was in the legislature, I put $5 billion back into the legislature. Representative Johnson is going to get tomorrow, I got it right, is going to get to tomorrow to vote for $9 billion more. I'm thankful that the legislature is right on this. As mayor, I'm a champion and a supporter, but I will not interfere with the independence of our school district.
As the daughter of a former teacher at Thomas Jefferson High School in the DISD, I know how critically important this is for our children. We do have 100,000 children living in poverty right now in Dallas. We're the 3rd highest of any of the big cities in America. And what we need to do is to ensure that you have someone who is going to be there for that quality education. But I would start even earlier, and I would start with the 0 to 3. I have chaired many of the organizations, including Child Care Group, that has been so critically important on this, and we need quality education. It doesn't matter how many iPads you give to a child. It doesn't matter how many of these other opportunities if they don't know where they're going to live the next week or whether they're going to have food. So we need someone who's going to champion the 0 to 3. We need the pre-K early education, and we need that full day because we need to have that kind of incentives for these kids and their parents to be able to get the jobs. We also need better after-school programs. There are places in Dallas, like in Pleasant Grove, for example, that don't have enough of these programs. And we need a mayor who will champion this with our businesses as well to create those opportunities.
So I went to public school. I had a great public school education. 95% of kids go through the public education system, so we've got to get it right. Currently, I'm the CEO of an organization that invests in public education. We invest in education for girls that are underserved and first generation to go to college. They're private dollars that we put into the public space. So I'd like to see efforts like that continue. I'd like to see our schools of choice and Magnet opportunities and all of our ISD continue. I'd like to make sure that we're continuing our Dallas promise. Currently, we've got 19 early college high schools. We're going to grow that out to 31 early college high schools so that kids are graduating. They got a trade, a vocation, a skill. They can get a job. So we've got to keep that going. We've also got to encourage businesses to get involved with our high schools, to provide internships, to provide mentorships, to have that one-on-one time with students so that they can see what a career and what a path is to these different careers. When you're from poverty and you don't have parents that went to college, you've got to have someone mentoring you and showing you the way. So it's a culmination of all these things, but there will not be a bigger champion for public education and getting things right in DSD than myself.
Thank you. We do need universal all-day pre-K. That has to be a priority. Our children are falling way too behind when they're young, and we know how expensive child care is, so that needs to happen. Beyond that, as mayor with DISD, I will not try to take over DISD. I did not support SOPs or home rule that effort. Also, I believe in our neighborhood elementary schools. The biggest asset DISD has is the neighborhood elementary schools. We need to keep them. And also, we have to look at what the city of Dallas can do. Our 2 best libraries in the city of Dallas are the Hampton, Illinois, and Arcadia Park libraries because they're on DISD campuses. In our future bond programs, we have to look for every opportunity for a library or rec center to put it on a DISD campus, or if it's up north, our ISD campus. I went to Pierce High School, so I need to give a plug for our ISD. We need to make that happen. because that is a way we can save so much money and help the school district while we help the public with the library or rec center. Thank you.
My mother was a school teacher. I taught college for 8 years, the last 4 years at Harvard and Yale, and there's one thing for certain that does not make me an expert at education at any level. Mr. Solis down there, given 10 minutes, could fill 10 minutes with expertise. One of the great opportunities of the mayor's position is to bring in experts. To bring in experts, get the experts, and let them guide us. The second piece, the great tool that the city has is to address the toxicity that affects a lot of these kids coming into school. If you have 80% of our kids coming into school on full food sustenance, if you don't have safe streets, if you don't have a good home, I don't care what you do in the school, when a kid comes in hungry and distressed, they're not going to learn. That's the role of the city, is to try the primary roles to support that piece so that education can take effect. First and foremost, I would focus on what the city has the primary responsibility to do and the opportunity to do, bring in great experts, and go from there.
I'm looking forward to us taking a greater role, and I'm thinking that your question is not just restricted to public ed. I'm thinking in terms of higher ed also. As someone that has served on five college or university board of regents at the fiduciary level, I'm thinking that Dallas needs to grow more infrastructure at the higher ed level through alliances and then through universities having more physical plant here. What we have to do is have more research dollars into Dallas, Texas. Other than UT Southwestern, we really missed the mark. UTD is beginning to come up through the rear, but then I'm still gonna consider that Richardson and not Dallas. What we need is more research dollars here. We need more of a pull strategy in education where industry leaders are working with the mayor to determine where we're going as a city so that the higher ed can produce more of that professional talent to fill those slots. Thank you.
There are two things that I am uniquely positioned to do, and if I'm elected mayor, I will do to help our public school system. Number one, the hardest populations to move educationally are poor children of color. You are looking at a former poor child of color from Dallas who is living proof of what education can do. You won't have a fiercer advocate in the mayor's office than me for education and to make that case to our children in this city that if they just stick with school, they just focus on school, their lives can turn around. And then the second thing is no entity has more of an impact on public education than the state legislature. So who better could you send and put in the mayor's office to go to Austin and advocate on behalf of public pre-K, full-day pre-K, which I've been doing for 10 years, and all of these educational initiatives that we need out of Austin than a former legislator who has a track record of legislating in these spaces. I've actually delivered dollars for Dallas's public pre-K program. I've actually helped end the school-to-prison pipeline, and I'll continue to do that as mayor.
Final question. Let's limit our answers to 30 seconds for this one, given our time restraints. Mr. Villalba, we'll start with you. How are you different from every other candidate on this stage?
I am different because I have exhibited at the biggest stage in Texas experience, credibility, and the ability to get big things done. When there are complex problems, my approach is to collaborate, work with others to find solutions. The reason I was the best of by the Texas legislature from all those organizations is because they know that I was able to reach across the aisle, work with people that might not agree with me to find solutions to these very complicated problems. I have a track record. I have skins on the wall. I have done it over and over and over on the biggest stage, and now it's time to take that common sense to City Hall.
My experience from many sectors, from the law, from the business, from the nonprofit sector, chairing the Mayor's Task Force on Poverty, that's what separates me out, because I understand and will be able to draw upon all that experience, and because I've been collaborative. In addition, I am not looking for another job. I will not have a second job. I am not running for anything else. This is not a stepping stone. And that is going to separate me, because that indicates that I will be true to the mission of the city of Dallas. I will only be looking for the very best of what we have for the city, the dreams that people can live.
So for 25 years, I've been dedicated to the service, working at a very grassroots level, understanding difficult issues, sitting across the table from someone that literally has their belongings in a garbage bag, and trying to get them back on their feet. I've worked in things that are not pretty in our city: homelessness, domestic violence, human trafficking. I've worked in public education, deeply understanding issues, and then having the ability to lead people, to bring people together in a collaborative way and get things done. I want to get things done for Dallas. I stay committed to Dallas, and I'd be honored to be your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I've served the last 8 years on Dallas City Council. Before that, I was 6 years on boards and commissions. I know Dallas City Hall inside and out, and it is unlike any other place. I am ready on day one to lead. I have already led on issues from killing the Trinity Toll Road to raising our police pay from $48,000 to $60,000 this last budget. And on day one, when I go into office, I will tackle the housing crisis. On day one, deal with public safety. On day one, deal with transportation. On day one, you will have a new kind of mayor that gets things done. Thank you.
We spent a lot of today talking about how you build neighborhoods, how you build city fabric. We talked about building water, sewer, and road. We talked about building access. We talked about starting companies and building companies from scratch. We talked about what makes a great city from the bottom up. I'm a bottom-up guy. I have gone through each of those pieces. That's quite different than my colleagues on the stage. And when you really, really get to it, that's all I know. It's all I care about. Austin is great. Not interested.
I'm the most thankful fellow. I'm the most thankful person amongst my colleagues. My life in Dallas, Texas has been a Cinderella story. I've worked with and for you. When the phone rang, I answered. I worked with you. I worked on your side. In the organizations we work with, we moved the needle. We got things done. Civically and in business, we've done the job in Dallas, Texas. I'm counting on you now.
I believe that I'm the best combination of integrity, experience, good judgment, and leadership skills. And that last one I want to put emphasis on, because great ideas are just that. They're great ideas, but someone's got to be able to build consensus around that horseshoe and get these things done. My colleagues have no shortage of good ideas, and I commend them for bringing them forward, but I have a track record in Austin that you can look at of passing legislation in a much more contentious environment, even than the Dallas City Council, and having to deliver more votes from a position of being in the minority to get things done. So that's what you should think about.
I'll say this, Dallas School Board is pretty contentious as well. Look, this is about experience, but it's about experience getting results for the people of our city at the local level, dealing with local politics and local government. I've exhibited that track record, delivering for our citizens. When I was 27 years old, I ran to the school board and said, I'm ready to run. People said, don't do it, Miguel. You'll lose all your hair. And at 28, I was on the school board as a school board president. We need to send a mayor on day one who has experience delivering for our people. I'll be that mayor, and I hope to do it with you, build a consensus. Thank you.
Well, to the candidates, let me say this. It takes a lot of guts to throw your hat into this ring, and each of you has contributed to the level of discussion about the issues our society and our community face. So thank you for your participation in this forum and in this campaign. Now to all of you, roughly 70,000, maybe 75,000 people are going to vote in this election. That's pathetic, but it also makes you even more important. Former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall once said, "This is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on." Being here is great, being engaged is great, but you now have a responsibility. You're one of the more educated voters in the entire city as a function of you being here today. So you have a responsibility to go encourage others to vote. And I would ask each of you to drag 3 people who otherwise wouldn't vote to the polls. And let's try to get to 100,000 voters in this election.
And a thank you to the moderator, Mr. Chapman. Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman.
You bet. Thank you for the great organizations that helped sponsor this event. Please, I would encourage you all to get involved with those organizations. This concludes today's forum.